Welcome everyone to our year-end Book Reporter Bets On video, where I share the books that I loved the most this year. Oh, and it was so hard to pick. And at the same time, I'm going to share what my top picks were for the year and give you a little insight into each of the selections that I made. This requires some memory because some of these books I read back in January. I'm going to start with a book that got a lot of attention this year called Broken Country by Clare Leslie Hall. Absolutely love this book. It's the kind of book that I stayed up till 2:30 in the morning reading. As soon as I finished, I jumped onto my phone and went on Instagram and started talking about it. And that's something I've never done about a book. It's set in a beautiful countryside where we have a woman who's married to a farmer and they are raising these sheep, and she has looks like she's got this idyllic farm life. Um, and then we realized that as she was growing up, she had far bigger ambitions for herself than being the farmer's wife. She wanted to go to Oxford. She wanted to study English. She had all kinds of dreams for herself. And part of these dreams revolved around there was a boy next door. It's always the boy next door who lives very, very wealthy and lives in a Tudor big home. And in she gets to be friends with him. They have a great relationship going between them, having a lot of summer fun. He goes off to Oxford, which is where she'd like to go. And she's all set to get a scholarship there and head there and follow him. Life gets in the way, and she ends up back on the farm, married to a fabulous farmer who is wonderful. And really, they have a great life together until they lose a child. When they lose that child, it kind of breaks their marriage, it breaks them apart. At the same time, who comes back on the scene? Ah, yes, the guy next door. And with him, she sees some of her dreams that have been kind of broken along the way. But at the same time, she starts to realize, who am I? What is my family? And he's brought back with him a young son. And he's now divorced. And this little boy comes over and hangs out with her a lot. And it's a lot of lost dreams for her own son are coming back. I'm probably not doing the best job of telling this book to you because there's so much emotion involved in it, and it's just absolutely a beautiful story. So, Broken Country by Clare Leslie Hall predicted at the beginning of the year be on a lot of bets on lists, and I'm happy to say I was right. Next up, we have a book that I did not have on my radar, but my readers or readers put on my radar. Came out in April, and it's by Virginia Evans. And I have to admit that probably the two birds on the cover weren't doing anything for me to try and pick this up. And I was looking and I was like, what is this book about? And over the summer, I got notes from readers, and they said, we can't believe that you haven't reviewed The Correspondent, that you hadn't talked about it. So I immediately reached out for a copy of the book. And also, I was going to do some traveling. So I said, let me grab the audio as well. And the audio on this is brilliant. Absolutely love it. And one of the reasons is there are different voices for each of the characters. Well, let me go back for a bit. There's a woman who's at the heart of the book, and she is very, very proper. And she constantly sends out written correspondence to people. And as we sit there and we hear from Sybil Van Antwerp, we get to know who she is, what her life is, what her family has been like. She's divorced. Her brother is living abroad. She is trying to get into the Maryland, University of Maryland to audit some of their English classes. She just has this whole life that as we're getting to find through the correspondence that she's writing. Same time, she's got some darkness in her life as well. She's a daughter she's estranged from, just like things have not gone well. She lost a child, and in losing that child, she's got a lot on her mind that she's thinking about with this. And she's writing all this correspondence, and some of the correspondence isn't being sent, it's being held back. And as the story goes on, we find out who she's been talking to, what the correspondent really, really is thinking about on so many different subjects. It's absolutely brilliant. My book group read it, and it's the first book that we all liked. I mean, mark that down. It was like everyone unanimously liked it. It's a book that readers are talking about. It hit the New York Times list for the first time in October, and that's very crazy for a book that came out in April. And it's been on for many weeks after that. There's a reason for it. The story really works. Once again, I listened to the audio and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So if you enjoy audio, I highly recommend picking that up. Next up, we have a book by Wally Lamb called The River is Waiting. This was an Oprah Book Club selection, and I confess that I'm not usually all over Oprah's books, but this summer I actually was. This book is beautiful. It's heart-wrenching. It's this book that's going to make you sad. It's going to make you think. The beginning, we've got a young man who is taking care of his twins, and it's a girl and a boy. He's out of work, and he's been drinking a little too much, and he's been taking a few too many drugs, and a terrible accident happens right at the beginning of the book, and something happens to one of the children. So I'm just telling you up front, if you've got issues with things happening to children, just know that that's what happens at the beginning of the book. He ends up going to prison for what happens. And beyond the prison walls, there's a river, and he constantly is thinking that the river is waiting. The river is waiting for him to get out. It's waiting for his life, I want to say, to be able to stream onwards, for him to get on with his world. It is absolutely beautiful. It is absolutely sad. I will confess that I cried a lot at the end of this book, and I actually sat thinking about the ending for a number of days because it's about when this man goes to prison and what happens to him there and how he really has to figure out what he's going to do with his life. But more than that, he's got to come to terms with what he has done with his life so far as a result of the things that have happened with him. So, absolutely great. I can't say this is lovely and upbeat. I'm not going to lie to you. But by the same token, it's a book that I really, really have given a lot of thought to. Next, we've got Heart the Lover by Lily King. This is the kind of book that I sat down and I just read. I just didn't stop reading because it was that good. I was so drawn into the story, so wanted to see what was going to happen next. I love the cover. I love everything about it. Read it with my book group. Most of us really liked it, which was a good thing. Here we've got a young woman who's in college. And when she's in college, she befriends these two guys that are super smart. And they're staying in the head of department's home. He's away on a sabbatical. So they're there in this gorgeous, home, and she goes over and they're playing all kinds of intellectual games with each other. They're super smart. They're talking about poetry and they're playing card games with each other and everything to try to challenge one another. First, she falls in love with one guy, then she ends up with the other guy, and she ends up going over to Europe and waiting for one of the guys, and we'll see what happens from then. And then we flash back. We flash forward, rather. We flash forward a number of years. She's now married. She's got two children, and she's living a beautiful life up in Maine, which very interestingly is where Lily lives. So she's up there. She's living this life that she's, really loves her children, loves everything about what's going on. And then one of these men comes back into her life and shows up there. And then later on, something happens that draws her back to them again. And throughout the story, she's called Jordan because this is what these guys have named her. And at the end, there's a little secret nugget that I'm not going to share too much about that will give an ode to writers and lovers, and it will tie the two books together for you. So if you're a Lily King fan, you're going to love it. If you haven't read her before, once again, I just zipped through this one. It was so well done. Next, we've got Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. Another book that got a lot of buzz because it was a read with Jenna pick. I had the pleasure of meeting Patrick at a lunch, a pre-publication lunch. And when we met each other, it was interesting to hear him talk about the uh, research he did for this book, which really starts during World War II and ends up during the Vietnam War. We have two couples. One woman, um, one man has not gone off to war. He has stayed home. He has married. He works in the hardware store, and he has a disability. So that's the reason he wasn't able to go off to war. And he's, well known in the town. Everybody knows him from the hardware store. And something happens with him and someone in the town. And at the same time, there's a soldier who's off to war, and he's kind of thought to be missing for a while, and then he returns home. And it's how these people pick up the pieces of their lives after World War II, what happens going forward. And also, there are two sons, and what happens with those sons as we have the Vietnam War looming And we're on the other side of things. We're on the other side of coming back from the war and we're headed into it. And there's a moment where everyone is sitting there waiting for their sons to get their number, what their number would be to see if they were going to be going off to war. And I remember that night and sitting there remembering it. I'm thinking about what it must have been like for these people to be sitting in their living rooms worried about their children like this. It's a lot deeper story than this, but I don't want to give anything away. Just know that Patrick Ryan has done a beautiful job with the story. He worked on it for a long time, and you can see the details that are in it that really make it explode. Next, I've got Speak to Me of Home by Jeanine Cummins. And this is she's the number one best-selling author of American Dirt. I was waiting to see what she was going to do next. And what she did was a really interesting story about actually four generations of a family that were from Puerto Rico. And she talks about what it was like for them to be living on the island, the with Mamina and Papilla, and then what happens when the children start to grow up and who moves to the United States. This one woman goes there, and what happens when she goes there is she is ostracized. She's in the Midwest, and her husband wants to join this fabulous country club. And they're told that he can join and the family can join, but she'll have to use the maid's quarters because she's not seen as a white person. She is Puerto Rican. And as a result, she has so many prejudices in her life that are being thrown up against her. And she doesn't really want to be in this world. And she's raising two children, one of whom is wants to, go back. He wants to go back to Puerto Rico. He wants his life back there, and the other one does not. And we're talking a lot here about what is home? What's the definition of home? What is race when you've moved from a different place? And Jeanine lived in the Midwest when she was growing up. So she's speaking, partially of truth or a lot from truth as she's telling the story. The writing is beautiful. It is absolutely stunning. As I was reading, there were so many paragraphs that I was just feeling like I was taken away by the writing, and that's a lovely experience. I've had that with some of these other books as well, but I'm really bringing it out here because that was one of the things that I loved so much about the book. So there you've got Speak to Me of Home by Jeanine Cummins. There's a lot of talk about autonomous cars these days, a whole lot of talk. And here we've got Culpability by Bruce Holsinger, where family is headed out in their car. They're going on driving on a trip, and the 17-year-old son is driving, but not really driving the car. Father's sitting next to him. The mother's in the back seat working, and their two sisters. And they're riding along in the car, and there is a horrible accident. And who is culpable in this accident? Is it the car? Is it the boy? Is it the father that was sitting in the front seat with them? Is it the mother who was sitting behind them? What is going on? And what are the implications of AI? What has happened when we've got something autonomous taking a family on a drive? And what we've got is this family going through this and then the ramifications later as we start to explore who was doing what that day. Oh, and by this way, they're going to get away from it all and they're going out to this island where they've always enjoyed themselves. And next to them is a tycoon who's having a fabulous big party. He's a tech mogul. And what does he do is a lot with AI. And who does this man's wife work for? Well, it's that company. So we've got a lot going on here. But at the time where we're talking about AI in such a huge way, Bruce has harnessed it so well to bring to us what should we really be thinking about and what should we really be doing. And I have to tell you something, I never want to get into an autonomous car. Just saying that. Okay, here's a book that came out recently, like we're talking December 2nd. And I had heard about it and it just sounded fun. And sometimes in December, you just need a fun book. Like you really just need to have a great time because you've got so much on your list of what to do. Well, The Heir Apparent is something I was reading over Thanksgiving weekend when I got an early copy, and I just couldn't stop reading because it was so great. And I just sat there going, this is just fun. Okay, here's the premise. You've got a young woman who's studying to be a doctor in Australia. She's actually in Tasmania, and she's out there and she's having fun. She's in, I think, her second year of residency, and it's life is going well. She's living with these two guys at a farmhouse. She's got a crush on one of them. The other one's one of her really good friends from medical school. And from now where they're training at the hospital, and a helicopter lands. And the helicopter out comes someone who is connected to her grandmother. And he says, "You must come home immediately. Your father has been killed in an avalanche, and your brother is in a coma and is not doing well. And we need you to come home." And the reason we need you to come home is her grandmother is the Queen of England, and she is the third in line to the throne. So she is the heir apparent at this point. She gets on the plane immediately. They take her from her farmhouse look to doll her up to get off that plane. She's going to be wearing these, fabulous heels again, a fabulous outfit. Meanwhile, it's nothing like the life that she's been living. And she's really loved the life that she's living in Australia. She really wants to become a doctor. But she also realizes she's got something of a commitment to her family. And partially it's because the other person who could become king is someone she would never want in that position. It's one of her uncles, and she just doesn't think he's the right person for the job. So she gets up there, she's all set, she's going to become the heir apparent, and then things from her past start cropping up. There are things that happened with her mother earlier. There are things that happened with her uncle. There's all kinds of little threads that need to be like woven together here. Rebecca does a really terrific job. It's her first novel. It's a debut novel. And I was just taken away because it seemed so much more polished than that. It seemed like someone who had been writing for a while now. I'm looking forward to interviewing her in January. We ran out of time this year, but I like the way she pulled it together. Yes, there are all kinds of threads. Yes, you'll see Diana. You'll see, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, fine, go and do that. But at the same time, take the story for what it is and how wonderfully she has taken her character and does she want to be the heir? And what's really going to happen to her? So well done. Next, we've got Good Dirt from Charmaine Wilkerson. I absolutely had loved her last book, which was Black Cake, that came out a couple of years ago. And I was looking forward to seeing what she was going to do next. And, Charmaine's one of those writers that when you get into her story, you're sitting there thinking about, well, what would have happened? What really did happen that day? There's a pot in the family, and you can see the pot on the cover of the book, and you can also see it intertwined with the young girl's face. There was a break-in at the house, and when someone broke in, this pot that had been in the family for years was broken, and her young brother was killed. And as a result of this, we're sitting there seeing a family that's been broken apart for years, and they're trying to figure out how to put themselves back together. And the sister knows some things that happened that day that she hasn't revealed. And as a result, things are, well, she's not being quite as honest with herself as she should have been. And as a result, we're looking into lots of things in this family's background. What was in the background? What was in their story? And why did that end up mattering so much? She does a brilliant job of writing. Once again, I love the way she develops her characters. I probably use that word brilliant too many times today, but I have to tell you, when I sit down and I read a book and I'm really invested in it the way I've been with the books that I've read this year, it really does matter amount. And I really do feel it is very, very brilliant to be sitting and thinking about what's going on. What we've got is that during the home invasion, this heirloom, which is called Old Mo, has been shattered, and it's been in the family for a really long time. And what's happened to this as a result? I listened to it, and I was very impressed with January Lavoie's narration. She made me have the characters come to life, and that really meant a lot. I did do a lot of listening on audio this year, mostly for time. Time is, I don't have enough time to read all the time. And so as a result, sometimes I can also get an audio early and I can take a long car ride and absorb a lot of it. And when it's really well done, it's terrific. Okay, Lisa Genova. My gosh, with Lisa Genova, how many illnesses have we looked at, mental illnesses that we did not know much about? Let me see if I can go down the list. We've taken a look at Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, autism, Huntington's disease, and ALS. And here she is taking us into the world of a young woman who is bipolar. She's manic depressant. What ends up happening to her, where she spirals, where she comes back down, what happens to Maddy. And by giving us a look into Maddy like this, you can understand a lot more about what is going on a person's head. You in the hands with this book of someone who wrote Still Alice. So many of us remember Still Alice. Alice had early onset Alzheimer's and what it was like for her in life. Here, you're going to feel the same way you're going to get into Maddy's head. And Maddy is going to do something that will really surprise you. She wants to become a stand-up comic. And when she's having a really good day, she's really good at doing this. But does that contribute to her mania? What does that do for her? And what does Maddy have to do to kind of fix herself? Because she goes off to college and all of a sudden nobody's watching out for all the little hints of what might be happening with her. And this is not something where you can just turn a switch and flip it and everything's okay. It doesn't kind of work like that. You really need to work with the patient and figure out what's going on. And Lisa walks us through the ups and downs of being more or less Maddy. Next up, we've got What Happened to the McCrays. I really enjoy Tracey Lange's writing because she does a great job of writing about family. I'm not doing a great job of holding up this book. What I really loved was she takes us inside a family, and here we've got a couple that's divorced. Oh, they're divorced. So their son died. Two of them are complete mess on what's going on. And he's come back to town because his dad has been ill and he's got to come home and take care of him. So all of a sudden, you're reading the opening of the book and you just realize he's coming back to town. You're not, thinking too much about, is there going to be any ramification for him besides taking care of his father? And oh, yes, there is, because there's your ex-wife that's really there in the background. And the two of you are really going to try and solve through this book, though they don't really go into it planning this, of what happened to McCrays. What happened to them when their lives fell apart, and can they get back to the place of between them that they love so much? Lots in this. There's, it's losing the child, but it's also losing your marriage as a result, and losing the love that became between you. And can you get that back? And that's what we're going to see if they can happen in What Happened to the McCrays. Next up, we've got it's When the Cranes Fly South, and it's by Lisa Ridzén. I got a copy of this book, and somebody said to me, I think you're just going to absolutely love the story. And I've got to preface this that my dad is 96 years old. And every time you see him, you never know if it's going to be the last time. You just don't know what's happening. We've got a fabulous caregiver living with him right now who keeps me the clue on what's going on all day long. And as a result, we're lucky that he's able to stay in my childhood home. We're really, really lucky. And here in this book, we've got a man who's living on his own with his dog, and his son and the family have decided he really needs to not be living alone. He needs to not be living with this dog. And there are a lot of things that he needs to be accepting at this time of life. So here you are, the child, trying to parent the parent, telling them what to do, how to do it. And then you're hearing what matters to them, what matters to this man at this point. And, as I sit there and I think about it, it's like you try to understand what the other person is feeling as you're reading this book. And you're seeing what calls to them, what means something to them. And he's waiting for this moment where the cranes fly south. And it is a beautiful book. I'm once again not doing enough justice to it. But by the same token, it's another book that when I finished it, I just want to press it into people's hands and say, you'll understand what's going on a lot more with your older parents if you read something like this, because it puts you inside a different head than the head that you're traveling around in right now. And it makes me realize that we've had a lot of conversation actually in the family, which is harder, when your body goes or your brain goes, which is more difficult when you can no longer really take care of yourself because everyone's afraid for you, you've fallen, things have happened to you, or when you are physically impaired and your mind is there. So it's a really interesting premise to sit there and think about going back and forth. So there's When the Cranes Fly South. Next, we've got What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. I really enjoyed this book because we started Book Reporter back we started working on it in 1995. And this book is set around that time where the internet was a new thing. It was, what is this thing? How do you use it? How can you keep in contact with people? And this young girl and her father are living off the grid. He's living off the grid because he was once part of the whole tech scene and he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't believe in what the way the information is being spread right now. He doesn't like the way this is what's happening in the world. And he's actually creating a manifesto against what's happening in the tech world. So she's living up in Montana. She's really off the grid. It's like she's living a life where they're building fires in the fireplace. They're going out to catch their food. And all of a sudden, something happens in the tech community. There's been some violence that's happening. And at the same time that that happens, her dad has been away. And she is starting to trace what has been going on in her life. And at the same time, she's been told her whole life that her mom was killed. Her mom was killed in an accident, and that's been something that's haunted her whole life. So, what really happened back then, what's really happening with her where she's living now, and why she's there, and what is her father really doing? It's very, very, very well done because it's a peek into the world before we were all connected to each other the way we are now. And it's at times before the world, there was so much noise. And it gives you a lot to think about because let's flash back to what that time was really like back in the mid 90s when everybody wasn't as connected as they are right now. So that's what kind of paradise. Okay, now I've got two books that it's going to be interesting to talk about because you're going to sit there and go, wait, what he's doing? Claire Leslie Hall, remember who wrote Broken Country? Hmm. Well, we were lucky enough that Simon and Schuster put out two books of hers that were previously only published in the UK. And we have both of these books to read now. Pictures of Him, and the other one is Days You Were Mine. Yeah. And I think that it's a lovely experience to be able to read Broken Country and then go back and read especially Pictures of Him, where there's so many strains of what was happening in what happened as she wrote Broken Country. You'll see a lot of the same themes, and I'm not going to give too much away, but that's what's going on in Pictures of Him. And Days You Were Mine was actually the idea of it came that her husband was adopted and they always wondered who his mom was and or his parents were for that matter, and she went and tracked them down. And it's what happens if you do find that parent and they come back into your life and perhaps they're a little bit more intrusive than what you wanted them to be. So we've got two earlier books by someone who's written one of the bigger books of the year, and I think it's nice, especially if you're in your book club, to read all three books and see the progression of the author's writing, that you can see it all in the same time in the same year. Pick them up and give especially pictures of him, this hand, Carol, pictures of him. You'll see many, many of the strains. And she said that was she was trying out things that ended up, becoming much bigger stories in Broken Country. So two extra fiction titles. We're going to pick up now talking about some historical fiction. I have a number of titles that I picked this year. And I want to tell you something also. As I'm talking about these books, I am not great at remembering character names. I think I've talked about this during Bookachino Live before. To me, it's the man, the woman, the boy, the girl, things like this. I don't usually remember character names. So you've got to pardon me if I'm only talking about people like that. I have tons of notes here, but I've decided not to read them to you. These are all the bets on copy that's on the site for each of these books. And we'll make sure we've got links in that for you. But I'm really just trying to give you an overview of some of the books that I was crazy about this year. And if I am not doing them justice, well, I do give you apologies, but I'm trying my best here. First up, we've got The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis. And I have been a Fiona lover for, I think this is her eighth book. And oh my gosh, she is just terrific. Here she takes us to Egypt, and where we're in Egypt, we're on an archaeological dig, and it's around the time of the war, and people are saying they're going, okay, who owns what property? Who can claim what to be theirs? And the war, when I'm talking about the war, it's World War II. And people are sitting there saying, we need to get out. We can't be doing any more discoveries. The world is starting to shift. We need to go. And at the same time, she is remembering an artifact that she was clamoring to, find there. And she was on this hunt for. And all of a sudden, years later, she's working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and she sees something that she believes was stolen years ago. And this piece, and like what happened along the way. Also, before she left Egypt, she was married and she had a young child. And when they were sailing away, something happened and the child is gone, and so is the husband. And so she's got this huge loss in her life. Okay, flash forward now. It's one of the Met Galas, and it's nothing like what it is now. It was there, it was very esteemed. It was not a costume show like what it is right now, it was a costume exhibit. And she was working on this exhibit, and there's a young woman that's working there, and they're working while they're working, they're with Diana Vreeland. And Diana Vreeland, is sitting there telling everybody what to do. And she looks at this young girl who's working for her, and she says to her, like, we're working for a gala. You should not be wearing saddle shoes. You should not be doing what you're doing. You should be wearing elegant shoes. You should be traveling in this moment of elegance. And so we've got her story intertwined with the story of this young woman who has traveled over to Egypt and has spent time there, had a tremendous loss there, and is now working in the artifacts area. By the time you sit there reading a book by Fiona, you want to go to the museum. Believe me, I wanted to go to the Met so badly after I finished this. I think I'm going to wait till after the holidays when everybody is like kind of tourism calms down in January, and just go see some of the famous artifacts that she is talking about in this book. It's also, we're talking about around the time when the King Tut exhibit was at the Met. And I remember that was the first ticketed timed event that I'd ever heard of. You have to be there at 12:45 in order to be a part of the exhibit or to get into the exhibit. So lots of wonderful history here and lots of what really was happening over in Egypt. She did a lot of travel there. Poor Fiona had to go to Egypt. She went to Egypt and did some like, exploration there and started to see, like, the whole area, so she could understand more about what happened in these areas when all different countries were all digging at the same time and looking for all different artifacts. And it's really a big story of who owns what besides everything else. Now, here's a book of historical fiction. I can't believe this is historical fiction, called Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Everybody's calling it historical fiction, and I'm like really scared because this was like during my lifetime. How can I be that historical? It's about the space program. And when I was young, I loved the space program. Oh my gosh. And you know what part I liked? I liked the part of sitting in mission control. I thought it would be the coolest job to work in mission control and be talking to the astronauts about everything that was going up with Apollo 11. I could imagine what it was like to be there trying to talk people through a really difficult situation. So here we've got two women who are astronauts, and they're a group of first time they're bringing in female astronauts, and the one who's in mission control didn't do really well up in space, or she just couldn't handle the difference in the atmosphere, the altitude, just every single thing. It didn't sit well with her. But are the best people to work in mission control? It's the people who have actually been up as astronauts, because they're the ones that see and know what the people are going to be going through. So what we've got is these two women. They're very close. This is the first book that Taylor has written where the two women are gay, and they are having this fabulous relationship. And imagine what it's like to be sitting at mission control where you can't be talking about this because that's not something that is talked about at the time. It's your secret. Yet the person that you love the most is the person you're trying to get back to Earth. Yes, it reads like a movie. It will end up being a movie at some point. But by the same token, the emotion that's written into the pages is so well done. And it really makes you think about what those days were like in the space program, which is totally different than the shuttle going up for 90 seconds right now and coming back down, and who's paying how much to be on board. Early days of the space program, very, very interesting. Okay, Georgia Hunter. Oh my gosh, we were the lucky ones. How many of you read that years ago? Well, here we've got a story called One Good Thing. And what she does here is we take a look at the war as it happens in Italy. We know a lot about the war in Germany. We know a lot about the war in England. We know a lot about different parts of the world, Poland. Um, but what was going on in Italy? And what she really wanted to do was trace the story of what happened. And she actually traveled the route that's in this book with her mom, who I had the pleasure of meeting with at a meeting at one of the events that she did. And it's about this woman trying to escape, and she has a young boy with her. And her job is her best friend's child is to get him to safety. That is what her responsibility is. Her friend has chosen to stay behind to start to fight a little with the people who were behind the scenes trying to stop the enemy. The woman, the mother of this child, is Greek, and I had no idea how many Greek Jews there were in the world. I mean, sometimes I'm reading books and I'm like, how can I be so obtuse about what's happened so far in the world? The woman's husband has gone home to Greece, and they have word that he has probably been killed. So this child means everything to her, and getting this child to safety is a big deal. The three of them are traveling together when all of a sudden the boy's mother is hurt. And because she's been hurt, she cannot continue to make the rest of the journey. So this woman is entrusted with taking her son. You can't go on trains, you can't go in any public places because you don't have you're trying to have like the right papers every place you go, but you don't want to be a spectacle. And you're finding out about all the people along the way that are helping you. The guy who's bringing you something on a bicycle that's going to be what you need for the next station and along the way. It's just wonderfully done. And you feel like you're traveling with them through Italy as you're trying to get them to a place where they'll be safe. And then what happens to this young woman when she gets there and this young boy, because they've really bonded at this point. So it's One Good Thing by Georgia Hunter. Now, I confess to knowing not very much about Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. Victoria Christopher Murray straightens me out on that. You know her as one of the co-writers of The Personal Librarian. And here she traces a story of a young woman who was working with W.E. Du Bois on his newspaper that was going out. And she was writing and she was really editing everything. She was doing everything. And she was sort of cast in the shadows because it was a man's world. I mean, gee, have we heard that before? Woman's name here, I want to make sure I have this correct, is, hold on one second, Jessie Redmond Fawcett. Jessie Redmond Fawcett. I found out a lot about her, and I found myself thinking more about the culture and the art and the writing that was coming out of Harlem during this time. She's having a relationship with Du Bois. She's kind of like also throws him a 40th anniversary party with his wife, which is kind of interesting. And his wife, knows what's going on, like a lot about his life right now. And who is she really? And is she getting to get her writing dream to come true? Or is she once again being hidden behind a man? And you know that very much with the personal librarian, that's what you're seeing is the women who didn't get their full due through the years. And that's what we've got here with this story as well. It's very, very well done. I felt like I was there. Period was spot on, really good. And if anybody has been watching the HBO show about during the before the Roaring Twenties, time period is going to evade me right now. Anyway, you're getting a feel for what was acting up in Harlem at the time as well. And I think that like when I was watching that and reading this, Gilded Age is the show. When I was watching Gilded Age and I was looking at this as well, this timing, Harlem is the Rhapsody is a little bit later, but you were getting a feeling of the culture of what was happening up in Harlem at the same time. So extremely well done. Next, we've got The Lost Baker of Vienna, which is by Sharon Kurtzman. Um, Very interesting because we haven't seen a lot of books of what happened after the war. As Sharon said, her parents were held in a camp, and she thought, oh, one day you finished at the camp, and then you went to a place where they reassigned you, and then you went home, and it was done. And it wasn't anything like that. And it was what the book starts out with telling us a lot about what it was like to be in Austria at that time, where Austria was still split into four different parts. One was controlled by the United States, one was controlled by Russia, different areas, different things, and walking between the zones wasn't really safe either. So we've got a young woman whose father has died. He was a baker and she loved baking with him. She loved pulling together recipes with him and watching him bake. And now she feels very lost. Her mother and her brother are living in this hotel and they luckily get a job working at a restaurant, a hotel that has a restaurant. And while they're there, they're able to eat better than most people. But she's also eyeing the thing that she wants to do the most, which is become a baker like her dad was. And as a result, she starts sneaking out in the evening and she goes back to the hotel and she is cooking in the kitchen with this young guy who also wants to be a baker. And the two of them are pulling together all these fabulous recipes. But at the time, you could be caught for being out late at night, and you could be caught because you're a woman and you shouldn't be doing these things. And it's a story of they're part of her family where um, brothers, let me say, her brother's granddaughter um, is part of this world. And when she's talking to, when he is a part of the story, he is now older, and his granddaughter wants to know more about his life as well. And she gets an opportunity as a food writer to go to a place to find out more about this time. And she takes that opportunity and goes, and what she finds out is pretty special. Sharon loves to bake. Was a food writer. This is her debut novel. She's not 22 writing her debut novel. She's middle-aged, everyone, but it is a fantastic debut novel. It's one that a lot of people have been reading and talking about. When we read it, we all really enjoyed it, and we all wanted to bake something that was one of the recipes that she's got up on her website. So, highly recommend it. And a lot of these books, see if you can reach out to the authors if you're in a book group and schedule time to have your book group speak with them. There's nothing can bring a book to life better more than the author going out and talking about their book. I'll list all the books where I have interviews with the authors, and I have a lot of these bets on authors that have been interviewed. But if you can, reach out with your book club as well and see if you can schedule time, because I think that takes a book and makes a book even more come to life. Speaking of which, we've got Last Call at the Savoy by Brissa Carlton. My book group is actually meeting tonight. We're going to do a Christmas party here at my house. We always meet at my house because I'm the only one that doesn't have young children, so I don't have to put toys away and tell everybody to go to bed. Usually my husband opens the wine and then we sit and talk the rest of the night. Last Call at the Savoy. Here's what I really love is tonight we're going to be doing all kinds of different cocktails because we were inspired by this book. We have two timeline stories here. Well, actually, it's one and a woman looking back. Woman's been, her sister has been called to be on bed rest. She works in England and she's going to be on bed rest at the Savoy Hotel. Worst places for such a thing to happen. So in Last Call at the Savoy, her sister goes with her, and her sister's been a wicked partier. The girls came into a lot of money when their parents passed away, and she's been partying, and she sort of hasn't gotten a big grip on her life. But she's her sister's go-to person right now, and the two of them are very, very close. So when her sister falls asleep at night, she goes down to the bar, the American bar at the Savoy, and she sits down and she starts talking to the bartender and has cocktails. And a lot of the cocktails were the cocktails that were invented, pulled together, made by a woman whose name was Ada Coleman, who's gotten no respect whatsoever for having come up with these recipes. She worked at the Savoy for decades, yet her name isn't on any of the recipes. I think there's just one, the hanky panky. Everything else has been ascribed to been ascribed to men. So this woman sits at the bar, gets to know more about Ada, and sort of starts pulling her life together at the same time. Yes, there's a guy on the scene. There's always a guy on the scene. Marissa's really interesting too. She's a Tony-winning producer of Broadway shows, and she's really involved in the theater world. And she's told me that when she came to New York and she wanted to get involved, she had been living up in Oregon. She decided that where would she go to learn more about the theater world? She would go sit at the bar at Sardi's. And when she was at the bar at Sardi's, all the people who were in the theater world would come in after the shows. And when they came in, they would sit down and talk to her. And they would talk before they went out, for the evenings and things like that. And that's how she got her start in the world, by being at this bar there and getting to talk to people. So this book has so much, it's so much fun on top of everything else, because it's a really great historical story. But at the same time, you've got this real vibe of what's going on when you go into a bar. And what she said is usually people are afraid to go to a bar and sit by themselves. And she says, you really don't have to be, because the bartender's watching out for you and making sure everything's okay. And if you sit there and say, like, I don't like the way somebody's looking or whatever, they're sort of in charge that night of making sure everything goes well. So not only is she talking about the fabulous cocktails that Ada created all those years ago, she's also talking about bar behavior for women. So there you've got Last Call at the Savoy. And my last historical fiction title is from Sarah McCoy, and it's called What Happened to Lori Lovely. And Lori Lovely was a huge star. She was a big movie star. And she had these places in all these big shows. And all of a sudden, she disappeared. And what happened to her? And she actually became a nun. And she is working. She's a mother at this point at a convent. And what was her life like before? She was in this hit show. She had all these fabulous things going for her. Her life was kind of made. So what happened to Lori Lovely? Why did she disappear? Why did she go off the grid? And we've got a young woman who's out to find out her history and find out her whole story. And she had all these fabulous acting jobs. And it was those days where Hollywood was really all glam. It wasn't like fake glam like I feel like it is now. It was real glam. And as a result, she was part of that whole world. And what made her walk away and what made her decide that, I'm going to go off the grid right now and I'm going to become a nun. And where did that story come from? And how these two interact with each other makes a really, really, really beautiful story. What happened to Lori Lovely? Now I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to go find some thrillers and mysteries. Every year, I'm surprised at how many thrillers and mysteries I've read when the year ends. I don't keep track during the year going, I've read so many of this and I should read so many of that. That isn't exactly what happens. What it is along the way is I find books that I'm really interested in, read them, and at the end of the year, I look and go, wow, that's how many I read of this. Isn't that interesting? Definitely what was my favorite thriller of the year is The Doorman by Chris Pavoni. It is set at a big apartment building on the Upper West Side, which in the book is called the Bohemia. You'll know as you're reading that it's really based on the Dakota. There are so many things that are the same in both of the properties. Chris actually lives in the Dakota, so he's got some knowledge of what it is like to live in one of these big apartment buildings where you have some people who are living in the smallest apartments and some people who are living in the apartments where you've taken two or sometimes even three and put them together because the space can't be big enough for you. But the story here really centers on the doorman. It's a man named Chicky, and Chicky is knows everybody in the building. He knows their habits, he knows what they do. And this day, when Chicky is going to work, he's doing something that he's never done before. He's packing a gun. And it's the kind of thing you're never supposed to do. You're not supposed to be bringing a gun to work. You're supposed to be bringing a gun walking around the city of New York. And he's got this gun with him, and he's, got it downstairs, and he is a person that sees everybody in the building and he sees everything that's going on. But to a lot of people, he's anonymous. Chicky is somebody that you just like don't even say hello to as he walked through the door, and others chat him up. And the inspiration for him came from Chris's own relationship with the doorman of their building, a guy named Johnny. Actually, dedicates the book to Johnny. And Johnny was somebody he would go out and talk to a lot about baseball and life and whatever. And one day, Johnny wasn't doing well, and he was in the hospital, and he was very, very ill. And then he did come back to work, but he knew he wasn't going to live a long time. And the one thing that he did do was he planned that his memorial service would be close to where the Dakota was and where the Bohemia would have been, because he wanted to be able to, easy for the people who were tenants of the building to come to his funeral. He was that kind of guy. And that was made Chris explore what it must be like to be somebody who doesn't go home to the kind of apartments that everybody in the Dakota is or the Bohemia is living in. Somebody who goes home to his apartment where he's in debt because of his wife's illness and she had passed away, and all of a sudden he hasn't been able to pay the rent for years. He's got hospital bills that are mounting. He has anything but the life of everybody else. And then we look at two different people in the building, actually three. There's a couple where he is a titan of industry. He is somebody who is the financial world, is his world. And that is the industry that New York has become. It's all about money. There's a lot less about the arts, as Chris is very, very wont to say. It's a very less about theater and art and culture, and it's a lot about making money and how much money do you have and what is your money going to mean. And As a result, you have this man's wife who is kind of the opposite of him. Kind of hard to think that they're together in a lot of ways, except that his money has bought her a lot of really nice things. And there's an artist who lives on one of the lower floors, and he is an art dealer and what he's looking for. And what their lives are all very, very, very different. But they're going to collide one night when a black man is killed in the city and the city all erupts. And a lot starts happening in this city that night. And who and what will happen to all of these people will come together in just a brilliant way. So I highly recommend The Doorman by Chris Pavone. Now, when you see that Scott Turow has got a new book out, and it's like, okay, fine, it's presumed guilty, and who does it have in it? Oh my gosh, that character that we all love. That character, let us see who's back this time. And he's back for, I guess it's the third time. And uh-oh, is this the last time we're going to get to see him? Probably. Because as Scott says, like, I don't think how many more years I'm going to be writing this book. Yes, we are back. Yep. Rusty Savage. We're back with Rusty. And we've got a story of not presumed innocent. We've got presumed guilty. And all of a sudden, Rusty, who has really hung up, like, I'm not going to do a lawyer, I'm not going to do any things anymore, is drawn into a case. And what ends up happening along the way? Because what are you going to sit there and see in this person that you're going to be able to get them off from what they've been charged with? It is once again a brilliant thriller from a legal thriller from Scott Turow, who really knows how to weave it all together. I'm not doing it justice because I'm not remembering every single little detail. I'm just telling you, read it. And it's highly, highly fun. And really, guys, you want to get Rusty Savage one more time. So here you go. Presumed Guilty by Scott Turow. Okay, William Ken Kruger is a huge he's an author that so many of our readers love. And we love his standalones. There have been three of them. And we love his series. And he is somebody that when the new series book comes along, our readers are flocking to read it. And I know why. Because each of them will bring you a backstory of what's happened, a great story of what's going on now, and a little bit of promise of what's going to happen in the future. And that's what we've got here in Apostles Cove. When our protagonist was way back at the beginning of his career, he might have sent the wrong man to jail. And now his son is sitting there saying, yeah, Dad, I think you did that. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, Cork O'Connor is sitting there going, what have I done? Because I wasn't so sure about that case back at the beginning, but we went with the best possible outcome. But now we're sitting there saying, did we do the right thing? And we're going to look at the story back then, and we're going to look at the story now. And we're going to see what did go wrong and why along the way might this person have been wrongly charged. I sent this man to prison. Should I have done it? And how can I correct what's happened? And where are we going to go from here? And was going to the prison, what did that man learn while he was there at the same time as we took so many years of his life? So I love it because I got a lot of backstory that was woven in together. Remember, any of Kent's books you can read as standalones. Do not feel you have to have read the whole Cork O'Connor series. It's not like that because he does a really good job of weaving in backstory as well. So there you've got Apostles Cove. Next up from Tess Gerritsen, we've got The Summer Guests. You may know that Tess has started writing this new series that's set up in Maine, and it is a bunch of ex CIA agents are living up there. And Tess actually learned that the town that she lives in Maine, there are a lot of people that she really didn't know much about their past. And then she realized, they're all ex-CIA people. So what if I write a book where all these people are living in the town? And if there's a crime, they're all going to get together and try and solve it together. So much fun. Older protagonists, older characters with lots of stories behind them as well. They are also the Martini Club. They get together and drink martinis all the time. And that house across the lake, well, that's where stuff happens. And that's where they've got all kinds of stories that they're going to figure out about exactly what happened there and how are they going to find these things out. I mean, those people are the summer guests, and they're the people now. Well, they're not the summer guests. They're the people that are living there, and they're going to get to the bottom of what happened because it's their town. So there you go. 10 Summer Guests by Tess Gerritsen. Next, we've got The Ghostwriter by Julie Clark. Oh my gosh, Julie writes so well. I remember meeting her for the first time, and she was talking about her book, The Last Flight. We were at a Winter Institute somewhere. I can't remember where. And as a result, I've been a real fan of hers. I'm following her career. Here we've got the ghostwriter. There's this woman who is a ghostwriter, a young woman, and her father is a horror writer, and they've been estranged for years. Something in their past, it's like not a good situation between the two of them at all. And all of a sudden, she gets a call that he's dying and he wants a story written and he needs her to be his ghostwriter. And it's not a horror story, it's a story of his life, it's autobiographical. And he wants her to be the one that tells it to people. So all of a sudden, wait a second, is your whole life going to go up in flames? Like, what is going to happen? Because you're going to tell what really happened on a night long ago and what the ramifications of that were for the rest of your life and the rest of the life of your family. So well done because you think about this woman and what it is like to be a ghostwriter, to go in and be interviewing somebody and try and get all the facts out of them and tell as good a story as you can. But you don't want to get in trouble with the law and don't want to get in trouble with what's going on. But what are you going to tell and how well are you going to tell it? And are you going to finally, as a result of being his ghostwriter, figure out what really happened in your own life as well? So there we've got the latest from Julie. Next up, from Hank Philippi Ryan, we've got All This Could Be Yours. And if anybody's ever wondered what it was like to go on book tour, well, you can join Hank and her main character here because that's exactly what's going on. This woman is out on book tour. And oh my gosh, all this could be yours. You're out there and people are adoring you. You're the one that's also eating room service dinner at like 11 o'clock at night. And all of a sudden, you've become a real star. You're being sent out on this tour. This is your debut novel. This is your debut thriller, and everybody is really excited about this book. And they're wondering about how much of it is true and is any of this based on your own life? And at the same time, you've just moved to this beautiful new home with your husband and children because you've got this fabulous advance and you've got all this money for the first time in your life. But you're trying to figure out who's trying to figure out pieces of your own life and what do they really know about you? And why are people raising their hand in the audience going, where did you live? Where did you grow up? Because you've been hiding a story for years as well. You've got something that's really dark in your past, and you're wondering if these people are trying to expose it. And your head is going in all these different directions because you're out on the road, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, all this could be yours, but is this really what I want? Do I want my life to be this disconcerted? So we've got the rip cover on the back of the novel. It's fun. If you've ever wondered what it was like for an author to be on book tour, she really captures it. And I was teasing her as she was on tour this year. I said, "Oh, do you have the day outfit on or the night outfit on? Are you stopping by the hotel?" And she has this fabulous idea that she orders room service before she gets back to the hotel because it can be waiting for you then when you check in. All kinds of great ideas. She also has the travel for day and the travel for night. Anybody who's ever seen pictures of Hank, I can't believe the woman's traveling as sparingly as she is because she's always so beautifully and elegantly dressed. So all this could be yours. Get backstage on a book tour. Next up, we have The Unraveling of Julia by Lisa Scottolini. Lisa's taken us to Italy for a couple of books, both in Eternal and Loyalty, and here she's taking us there again. And Italy in Lisa's hands is a heck of a lot of fun. So, what do we have? We have a young woman who's lost her husband in a really violent attack, and she's really disconcerted about what happened. She's also lost her adoptive parents, and she's kind of at sixes and sevens about what to do with her life. And then all of a sudden, she gets a letter that she's inherited a vineyard in Italy, and she's going to go to this vineyard to check it out to see what can be done there. Is this worth keeping? Is this worth selling? And from here with Lisa, you can picture her pulling into this small Italian town, setting up her whole life here. setting up her whole story of what's going to go on. And at the same time, she's starting to have all kinds of disillusions about what's going on. I mean, really, she is unraveling. The poor woman is sitting there saying, who am I? What is going on? Because she's all of a sudden, it's like a psychological thriller for her of what is my life? Everything's like everything's scrambled. Who am I supposed to believe? Who am I not supposed to believe? It's a real psychological thriller. And we, at the same time, are seeing the beautiful Italian countryside. We're seeing a house that maybe it's not as beautiful as we'd want. It's a little run down, but what can this be? And most of all, we're seeing a young woman who, while she's there, is really trying to find herself as she's in Italy as well. And I can think of worse places to have to go find yourself and the fabulous people that she meets along the way. And she starts to become really much more accustomed to being in this town than she has in any other place that she's been. And for your reading, to make your reading even more fun of this, Lisa does extensive research on her behalf. She goes to Italy and she always puts up beautiful videos and stories about what's happened on her website. So if you want to feel like what this was happening to, Julia as she's trying to settle in with what's going on in this small town, you can see all kinds of pictures the way that town looked to Lisa as she was writing when you go out on her website. So the unraveling of Julia, she likes this Julia character so much, she's told us that it's going to be in her next book. So we'll have to see if that happens. And that book is probably going to be taking place back in the States. So you want to catch the unraveling of Julia now and probably the putting together of Julia in the next book. Maybe, we're not so sure. Next, from Sherry LaPena. Sherry's what I call my one sit read, meaning that when I start reading her, I don't stop. Usually standing in the pool. I usually start in the beginning of the day and I'm out there for a very long time because she's got those kind of thrillers you just can't put down. And what we have here is this young mother is working in her apartment and all of a sudden she's supposed to pick up her child at daycare. She doesn't go. Her husband gets home. Her keys are there. Everything is there. Her phone is there. It's not like she's left the scene. What happened to this woman? And Lucy Foley's got whiplash twists and turns. It absolutely does, because you're going to find out more about this woman and her life with her husband and her child. And there are going to be people that are going to come back on the scene, and you're going to go in 16 different directions because she didn't see it coming, and neither do you as the book is going on. So, Sherry O'Payne is sit down. You don't want to put the book down. This is the one you want to be reading. In Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, we have a writer who has hit big success. He's a New York Times bestseller. He is so excited about what's going on in his world, except that something's happened and that his wife is gone. His wife has disappeared. He puts him into a deep depression. She's missing, and he can't figure out what is going on. He can't write anymore. He's just completely stumped at sixes and sevens on what's going on in his life. And he just doesn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, someone invites him to take a writing retreat and come out to her home, which is in this fabulous area, and sit down and try to get his mojo back on writing. And where he goes, there's no cell service, there's no internet. The people are really quirky. There's this island. Can't figure out who's coming and going. All kinds of things are really, really strange that are happening around him. And what's really happening to him at the same time. So is he writing a book? Is he writing a story? Or is his life being written around him? And that's what's going on in Beautiful Ugly. And you're going to find out what really happened all along the way. Alice twists and turns you like usual. Next up is Saltwater by Katie Hayes. I love this book. Once again, we're set in a resort area where a family goes every summer for a week in July. Years ago, the mother of one of the in one of the families was killed there. Well, she died there. Well, did she stumble and fall? What happened to her there? But every summer they go back because the real story is not known about what happened that summer. And it seems like the family is going back to prove that they are not culpable, that they had nothing to do with this. And they can come back every summer with great pride. And I think this is the 30th summer they've been coming back. Something crazy, decades that they've been going back the same week that she dies. And what we've got here now is one of the children is sitting there going like, what is going on? What has happened all this time? It's she's sitting there going, wait, why did we come back here every year? And when we come back here, like, what is the story? And what's really all these people in my life? And do I really know them? What's going on? I picked it up at a time where all I wanted to do, I think it was like winter, and I was like, I just want to be someplace on a beach. I think it was March or April. And I said, this is the book that I'm going to get away with. And boy, Katie Hayes took me away. She'd also written a book called The Cloisters. And you're in these books and you're wrapped up in the family situations, you're wrapped up in this gorgeous atmosphere, and you're wrapped up on, are we going to really solve this? And we do at the end, and we find out what really happened those years ago in July. So well done. Salt water. You want to be sitting by salt water when you read it, or you'll have to pretend that you are one or the other. Next, we've got Please Don't Lie, which is the first thriller that Christina Baker Klein has written, and she's writing with Anne Burt. I talked to the two of them. I was at a party at Jonathan Santlifer's house one night, and the two of them were saying, Carol, don't forget our book's coming out in September and you want to read it. And I was like, the two of you wrote a thriller together. And they go, yes. And what happens in this book was we've got a young woman whose parents passed away. And when they passed away, she was left an exorbitant sum of money. And she's, as a result, has a lot of money, nothing to really worry about. She marries this guy that she's been dating, and they move off the grid. She doesn't want to live like near people anymore. They move to this piece of property, and he's fixing up the property. She's enjoying being part of a small town, but also just trying to get herself together again. And then a couple comes and starts living on the property as well. And there's all kinds of feelings that she's got about these people. Oh, this is another couple. We can be close with them. We can have them over for dinner. And at the same time, she's thinking of her sister, who, after this, terrible fire happened, her sister ended up in dying of a drug overdose. And she's sitting there going, wait a second, what is going on in my life? I really don't have anybody. I've got this great husband. And now these other people come on our property, and maybe now they can be friends as well. And Please Don't Lie has got a lot to be said for it, because she's trying to keep some secrets, and she's not doing a very good job of keeping them. And yet she's finding out a lot of other people have been lying to her for a really long time, and she doesn't want to be lied to anymore. So here's Please Don't Lie. I understand they've got a follow-up coming to this as well. Next, we've got The Queens of Crime by Marie Benedict. And many of you remember a couple of years ago, Marie wrote a book called The Mystery of Mrs. Christie, when Agatha Christie had gone missing for 14 days, and what was behind that mystery, where was she, and a hypothesis about what happened. Well, here she brings together Agatha and some of the biggest crime writers of their time to solve a mystery of something that had happened on an island, and a young woman has been killed, and what happened to her, and all kinds of different loose ends are running around. And how are these women going to work together to figure out what happened with the crime? Each of them is going to take their own expertise, pull it together, and work with the others to figure out what did happen to this young woman, and why, could we not figure out what was going on before? Got the Queens of Crime, because once again, she's twisting a number of different directions, and we've got some really legendary female crime writers on the case. So you want to check out the Queens of Crime. Next up, we have The Oligarch's Daughter by Joe Finder. Joe does a great job of writing about Russia, and it's really fun to see him back there, back on that turf again, writing. In it, we've got a young guy who's working on the street. He's doing well at his company. He's kind of made some money by doing some really smart things, and he's got a lot of potential. At the same time, he's met this girl who's an artist. She's a little bit down on her luck. She's got this apartment, which is this walk up, not so special, and they fall for each other, and they're having a great time. And all of a sudden, she says, "Why don't you come up and meet my family?" So they go to the Upper East Side, where there's not just one Upper East Side brownstone. There are two that are put together, and that's where her family lives. And he starts to put together that, oh, this is an oligarch's daughter. And this man, this Russian man, takes a huge interest in him, because he thinks that, well, you could be over making some more money for us. You could be making more money for us and more money for yourself than you could if you continue working at that firm. So what ends up happening with him, the oligarch, and the oligarch's daughter? It's really a terrific read. I love seeing Joe like running the streets of Russia again. And also, I love the ending. There's just a beautiful, beautiful part of it. I understand it's been optioned for a film, and I actually could see the film rolling in my head, and I could see the credits coming up towards the end. So I hope it gets made. The Oligarch's Daughter by Joseph Binder. Next, we've got The Break-In by Catherine Faulkner, and I've loved her two past books as well. This one has got a really interesting setup. There's a play date going on, and any mothers who have had play dates know exactly what that means. The children are off playing in one room, the women are gathering in the other room, and actually, she has a nanny, and the woman's nanny is in the house, and she's out with the children, helping them out. And all of a sudden, there's a break-in. Somebody comes in. The woman who owns the house is in fear of what's going to happen to the children, and she kills the guy. She kills the intruder. And all of a sudden, we try to figure out what was really happening that day. The protagonist starts to spin out of control. She goes now searching down his family, searching down his history, searching down his life. And at the same time, there are a lot of other things at play as well. Catherine does such a great job of bringing all these like little pieces together and weaving the story for us from all these little fragments that are out there. And we see the break in, yes, fragments, fragments of glass all over the ground, fragments of this people's lives, and fragments of how it all comes together. So there you are, Catherine Faulkner, The Break In. Next, we've got The Note by Alafair Burke. Story takes place out in the Hamptons, and they're a group of friends that are going out and they're having a girls' weekend out there together. Some of them get along better than others. It's that kind of thing where you've been friends for so many years. What kind of things from the past are bubbling up? What things are we all the same about? What are we different about? Well, okay, they go out and they're going to go out and have a drink. They're going to go out and party on the town. And as they do, there's somebody who pulls into the parking spot that they want. You know, that moment where you're all set to pull in and somebody sneaks in. And what happens to you when that ends up happening? Well, one of these women goes and writes a note and sticks it on the guy's car and says, like, you took our spot, like, who do you think you are? Like, all this kind of stuff. And they go into the bar, they have a couple of drinks, they go and they leave and go home. And the next day, that guy is found dead. And there's a footage of them going over and putting something on the car. And from there, we start to examine what was really happening that night. Who knew what? Who was a part of this whole thing on the back end? Who really knew this man, or did they? Who was the one that was taking that parking spot? And the note is where everything unravels from. And all of a sudden, there are police at the door, and there are all kinds of questions as to what's going on. So think about that moment. I mean, one time I swear I took somebody's parking spot and I didn't know I did it. Come out and there was this huge scratch along the side of my car. And believe me, I was looking for cameras and there were none. So this time there are cameras. They're finding you. They're searching you down. Here you go. Alfair Burke, The Note. And our last is a mystery in this mystery segment, thriller segment. It's the final book in Nita Prose's Maid series. Any of us who knew Molly the Maid and have been reading this series absolutely love her character. And now all of a sudden, one of the maid's secrets is going to be exposed. It's a maid novel. It wraps up the books that have come out before so beautifully. We get to know Graham. Remember Graham that Molly the Maid has been raised by, and we get to know a lot more about her past and a lot more about the secrets that have gone on in her life as well. It's a perfect wrap up to the series. We can't wait to see what Nita does next, but we also feel really happy that she pulled off the last book in the series and gave us such a satisfying ending. So if you haven't read them before, pick them up. You really do want to read them in order. This is one of those times I'm going to tell you, yes, you do want to do that. If you pick this one up, yes, you'll pick up backstory. But if you really want to see the whole story involved, I recommend you reading the entire series in order. This last category of books is memoirs and nonfiction. And I decided to do something different this year. I wanted to look at some social issues that I probably didn't know enough about, and I wanted to delve into them more deeply. The first one, and really who gave me the idea for it, was a book called Dear Sister, a memoir of secrets, survival, and unbreakable bonds. That's by Michelle Horton. Michelle Horton's sister was in an abusive relationship. Michelle had no idea this was going on. Her sister had two young children. And she was being abused by her husband. And she didn't know how badly abused until she got to know what was going on in the story more, because she actually knew nothing. And she was so embarrassed that, looking back, she didn't know what was happening at all with her sister. So one night, oh wait, and at the time, Michelle has just been divorced and she has a young son as well. And one night, doorbell rings, two police officers and say, "You need to come down to the police department and you need to take your two sisters' children." And she's like, "What?" And they go, "Yes, you've just got to come. Don't ask any questions. Just come take these children. And you need to go to the house and get them now." And so she goes and she gets the children, and she learns that her sister has shot the man she was living with, who is the father of these children, and he's dead. And as a result, what is happening to her is her whole life begins to really unravel, because she learns that her sister has been abused by this man for years, horrifically abused. Abused in that pictures of her sister have been put up on the internet in all kinds of terrible positions. And as a result, her sister, because she killed him, because she shot and killed him, is found guilty of murder. And she is put in jail for 15 years to life. Now, meanwhile, this man has been abusing her for years. He's been doing all kinds of horrible things to her, and there's no justifying it at this point. It's like, you murdered him, and that's all the discussion is about. And it's a story where we learn how many women are incarcerated for things exactly like this, and how really the government is against them. The government is against them telling their stories, and how extremely difficult it is for these women to either defend themselves or to be able to have any kind of emotional backing for them whatsoever. So her sister's in jail for years. There's a whole community trying to get her out. There's a trial where there's a whole lot of misjustice has been done. And it's really about her also raising these children at the same time and trying to keep them whole and happy. And also her son in that same situation. And all along the way, it's they're thinking of each other. It's, "Dear sister, this is what I'm doing for you. This is what I want for you. This is what I love you." So it's a very, very, very powerful book. Next up is a book from Jeff Hobbs. And I want to say I interviewed Jeff 11 years ago when he wrote the Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace. I did one of the first interviews with him at Book Expo years ago. Here at Seeking Shelter, it's a working mother, her children, a story of homelessness in America. It's really interesting. It's interesting in these days where we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about what people can afford. This is a woman with a job. She has a job. She's got four children, another one on the way, and she still cannot afford housing. She's got an abusive husband. She walks away from him, and how she is going about first surviving and secondly rebuilding her life, and what opportunities are given to her along the way. And the biggest thing to her right from the beginning is that her children must be getting a good education. So she does everything she can, including driving them for long distances every day, to drive them so that they can be in the best school district that they possibly can be in. There's a lot in here that I didn't know about homelessness in America. Is a lot I didn't know about what is happening. I also did not know that there are times that there are no shelters, and at night, 7 o'clock, and I think about this many times at 7 o'clock now, a woman is dialing 211 to see if there's a place for them to stay that night. And it's going to be a hotel room someplace, not the same place they were usually staying in the night before. It's a place where they're going to pull in with their family. They're going to spend the night, and they're going to be told to leave in the morning. And about trying to hold your family together and get your children to do homework and brush your teeth, probably at the McDonald's, because you know that when you get back to the place at night, you might be sleeping in your car, and how to sleep in your car safely, and where do you park to sleep in your car safely. So really, really interesting story about seeking shelter, and really where we do have a problem in America. And we know on this site we are not political, but at the same time, we want to be informed about the issues of what's going on today. And this is a lot about even a person who's working and not being able to afford a place to live. Next book we've got is This Happened to Me by Kate Price. And once again, it's another one of the selections that I pulled because I was trying to get to know something else about what was going on in America today. At a young age, she grew up in Appalachia, and she would go to the library every day, sort of just sit down on the floor and read books. Librarians would put books into her hands. She'd read good stories. She'd get to know different worlds and different places. And she worked hard at school because she knew that an education was her way out, her way into being in a different part of a different part of the world for herself. At the same time, she knew that there's something wrong in her past. There's something in her past. There's something that troubles her that makes her feel like she's not from a family like other people are. And she sought counseling from a Dr. Bessel, Vanderkolk, who's the author of The Body Keeps Score, to help her work through the bits and pieces of her memory that she had. And she'd unwrap facts about where she had been abused in life and what had happened with her father in full knowledge of what was going on, and how then she's putting herself back together, saying, this happened to me. It's sad, but it's not sordid. It is really a woman that knew that something was going wrong in her life and said, how am I going to fix this? What am I going to do? I clearly have something I've got to clear out of my life before I go on. So this happened to me, A Reckoning by Kate Price. And my last book was a book that I completely enjoyed because I know a lot about immigration stories. I mean, my family had immigrated from Italy. My husband's family had immigrated from Germany. So I knew a lot about those stories. But I really didn't know anything about the Vietnamese experience and coming over as a boat baby, fleeing communist Vietnam. And Vicky Nguyen tells the story really well in this book. She leaves from Vietnam, communist Vietnam, on a boat with her family. They're attacked by pirates. They end up in Malaysia, where they stay for a time. In fact, she's leaves when she's 18. She leaves when she's 8 months old. She's 18 months old here on the cover. She learned to walk when she was in that Malaysian camp. And from there, her mother wrote a note that helped them get to a family in Oregon where they lived for a number of years. Her parents went off to start businesses, and she tried to become an American kid. And she tried to figure out what American kids did by reading books. She read Judy Blume. She read everything she could get her hands on. So she understood what American kids did. She became a cheerleader when she was in high school because she felt that would give her the biggest community and a way of being a part of a big part of the college experience. She met her boyfriend when she was in high school, and they went on to get married. He became a doctor. She had thought about going into the sciences for a long time, and then just got drawn into the business of reporting and the news business. And she travels around the country to all these smaller markets where she's trying to get, like one step better along the way to move her career along. Vicki is now NBC News consumer investigative correspondent and the anchor of NBC News Daily. And it's really fun to see like where she is, like, as a little boat baby over here. Love the story, loved hearing what happened to her along the way. Also, the way her heritage is so ingrained that family is such a big part of your life. Her parents have been a huge part of her children's life. They've lived with them for years, and how they've helped her raise the children just as much as she was helping them become more American when they were here. And she was kind of raising herself, while at the same time trying to make them proud of her as she was going along. It's really interesting because there's still a big part of her life. They still live there 5 days a week. She said she recently bought them a place so they can get away on weekends and they can get their lives back. But it's a story about family and the importance of it. And we know it from so many different cultures, but hearing it from hers and hearing how she's raising her children, how family is involved in it is really, really terrific. So there are 42 books, people. 42 books. I hope I did enough of a good job of explaining them to you that you want to go out and read them. List will be below. It'll be on the site, so you'll be able to take a look at it. You can read my commentary for each of the books, which is a lot better than what I talked about today because I was doing a lot of memory. And I decided I was not going to do scroll cue cards for myself. I was going to have somebody holding up, this is what to say. I hope you heard my passion for the books, and that's more than anything else. It's the books that really captivated me throughout the year. And they took me in so many different directions and told me so many different stories. And I will say that my education has been, my roots have been spread by actually reading all these books this year. And it's been a real joy to be bringing them to you. I've already got some lined up for next year. I am ready to go. And once again, there's no at the beginning of the year, this is how many it's going to be. In fact, the staff always says to me, "What do you think you're going to end up with?" I said, "I have no idea. Let's just sit and see if we figure it out." And they always hope it's something divisible by some kind of a fraction, because we're going to be giving away all of my books to one person at the end of the year. And then I believe it's 7 people are each going to read 6 this time because they're $42. So it has to be some kind of division. So my math wonders help me with that. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful year of bringing you books, and we look forward to bringing you so much more in 2026. Thank you.